I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Saudi Arabia to introduce an address by the head of state.
Your Excellency, President of the Security Council, Mr. Volkan Bozkir, Your Excellencies, distinguished attendees, peace and blessings of God be upon you. It's my great honor to introduce this statement of the custodian of the two holy mosques, King Salman bin Abdulaziz, King of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Thank you, Mr. President. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, Your Majesties, Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, Mr. President of the General Assembly, Mr. Secretary General, distinguished attendees, may God's peace and blessings be upon you. At the outset, I would like to extend my sincerest congratulations to Mr. Volkan Bozkir on his election as President of the 75th session of the UN General Assembly, wishing him success in fulfilling his duties. I would also like to extend my thanks to his predecessor, Dr. Tijani Mohammed Bandi, President of the previous session, for his great effort. It would be a remiss not to commend the distinguished endeavors of His Excellency Secretary General Antonio Guterres to improve the performance of UN institutions to attain the objectives and purposes of its charter. Mr. President, distinguished attendees, I address you today from the birthplace of Islam, place of revelation, and the Qibla for Muslims. My message is based on the teachings of our noble religion, our Arab culture, and our common human values. They all call for peaceful coexistence, moderation, and solidarity among the nations and peoples of the world to confront the extraordinary challenges facing our world. Our world today is facing tremendous challenges, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic and its health, humanitarian, and economic repercussions. It compels us all to stand together and face those common challenges to humanity. In its capacity as president of the G20, the Kingdom has coordinated international effort by holding a leaders' summit last March to coordinate the global effort to combat this pandemic. The summit aimed at curbing the humanitarian and economic impact of this pandemic. During the summit, the Kingdom announced a pledge of $500 million in support of efforts aimed at combating the pandemic and reinforcing emergency preparedness and responses. The Kingdom continues to promote global response effort to address this pandemic and its repercussions. The Kingdom is one of the largest donors of humanitarian and developmental aid. It provides its support to all peoples of the world, irrespective of their political, ethnic, or religious affiliations. Over the past 3 decades, the Kingdom provided more than $86 billion in humanitarian aid, benefiting 81 countries. Distinguished attendees, my country, ever since the foundation of this organization, has been at the forefront, along with other nations, to achieve international peace and security. It has been consistently working to mediate conflicts, to reach peaceful solutions to disputes, as well as seeking to prevent conflict and support security, stability, development, and prosperity. However, the Middle East has been suffering from major security and political challenges that undermine the security of its peoples and the stability of its countries. Our region has been facing for many decades attempts by the forces of evil and extremism to impose their malign views and policies in order to hijack these countries' present and future, paying no heed to the aspirations of the peoples of the region for development, prosperity, and peace. In the Kingdom, we chose a path for the future through our Vision 2030, which aspires to create a robust economy and an interactive community, thus contributing actively to the progress and civilization of humankind. Regionally and internationally, the Kingdom advocates a policy based on respect for international law and its principles to achieve security, stability, and prosperity in the region. We support political solutions to conflicts and combat extremism in all its forms and manifestations. Distinguished attendees, over the past decades, the Kingdom's hands were extended openly and positively to Iran, searching for peace, but to no avail. The Kingdom received several of Iran's presidents and other senior officials in line with the Kingdom's efforts to seek ways to build relations based on good neighbourliness and mutual respect. We welcomed an international effort to address Iran's nuclear program. But time and again, the entire world witnessed how the Iranian regime abused these efforts to fuel its expansionist activities, build its terrorist networks, and use terrorism. In the process, it squandered the resources and wealth of the Iranian people to fulfill its expansionist project, which only brought about chaos, extremism, and sectarianism. The Iranian regime, conforming with its hostile attitude, targeted oil facilities in the Kingdom last year in a blatant violation of international law and international peace and security. It demonstrated that this regime has total disregard for the stability of the global economy or the security of oil supplies to international markets. The Iranian regime also continues, through its proxies, to target the Kingdom, launching to date over 300 ballistic missiles and more than 400 armed drones in a stark violation of Security Council Resolutions 2216 and 2231. Our experience with the Iranian regime has taught us that partial solutions or appeasement will not stop its threats to international peace and security. A comprehensive solution and a firm international position are needed to ensure fundamental solutions to the Iranian regime's attempt to possess weapons of mass destruction or develop a ballistic missile program, and its interference in the internal affairs of other countries, as well as its sponsorship of terrorism. The Iranian regime's interference in Yemen by supporting the coup carried out by its proxy, the Houthi militia, against the legitimate government led to a political, economic, and humanitarian crisis that the fraternal people of Yemen are still suffering from. This coup is a threat to the security of the countries of the region and the waterways vital for global economy. Furthermore, the Houthi militias impeded the flow of humanitarian aid to the Yemeni people. They also obstructed efforts to reach a political solution in Yemen. They rejected efforts to de-escalate the situation, the latest of which was the ceasefire announcement made by the coalition to support legitimacy in Yemen last April in response to the UN's request in order to proceed with efforts to combat the COVID-19 pandemic in Yemen. Instead, they continue to target civilians in Yemen and in the Kingdom. We reiterate that the Kingdom will not hesitate to defend its national security, nor will we abandon the fraternal people of Yemen until they regain their complete sovereignty and independence from Iranian hegemony. The Kingdom will continue to provide humanitarian support for the people of Yemen, and we will continue to support the efforts of the UN Secretary-General Special Envoy for Yemen in accordance with the GCC initiative, the outcomes of the comprehensive Yemeni National Dialogue, and Security Council Resolution 2216. Distinguished attendees, terrorism and extremist ideologies pose a major threat to the world at large. Together, we have made remarkable progress in the past few years in combating extremist organizations, including substantially rolling back ISIS strongholds in Iraq and Syria, thanks to the efforts of the global coalition. Similarly, the forces of the coalition to support legitimacy in Yemen were able to strike hard against Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Yemen. To succeed in our battle against terrorism and extremism, we must intensify our joint efforts by facing this challenge comprehensively. This includes combating financing of terrorism and extremism. The Kingdom has supported many international entities that contribute to reinforcing our joint efforts to combat this challenge. The Kingdom supported the UN Counterterrorism Center with $110 million. It has established the Global Center for Combating Extremist Ideologies at Atidal in Riyadh, and it also hosts the International Terrorist Financing Targeting Center. We in the Kingdom, thanks to our position in the Muslim world, bear a special and historical responsibility to protect our tolerant Islamic faith from attempts to defame it by terrorist organizations and extremist groups. Islam equates the killing of one individual with the killing of all people. Thus, it is undoubtedly innocent of all crimes and atrocities committed in its name by the forces of terrorism and extremism. Terrorist and extremist organizations find fertile ground to grow and proliferate in countries where there are sectarian divisions and weaknesses, or where state institutions are in collapse. If we intend to win our battle against terrorism, we must not waver in the face of countries sponsoring terrorism and sectarianism. We must stand firmly in the face of countries promoting transnational extremist ideologies, which shield behind false political slogans to hide their extremist, chaotic, and destructive nature. Distinguished attendees, peace in the Middle East is our strategic option, and we will spare no effort to work together towards achieving a bright future where peace, stability, prosperity, and coexistence among all the region's peoples prevail. The Kingdom supports all effort aimed at advancing the peace process. We have been introducing peace initiatives since 1981. This included the 2002 Arab Peace Initiative, which is the basis for a comprehensive and just solution to the Arab-Israeli conflict. It ensures that the fraternal Palestinian people would regain their legitimate rights, foremost being an independent Palestinian statehood with East Jerusalem as its capital. We support the efforts of the current U.S. administration to bring about peace in the Middle East by bringing both the Palestinians and the Israelis together at the negotiating table to reach a fair and comprehensive agreement. While we follow with concern the developments in Libya, we call upon all of our Libyan brothers to sit at the negotiating table and unite to maintain the territorial integrity and safety of Libya. We condemn foreign interventions in Libya and support a peaceful solution in Syria that maintains its territorial integrity and ensure the departure of all militias and mercenaries. We also stand by our fraternal people of Lebanon who are experiencing a humanitarian catastrophe following the explosion of the port of Beirut. This was a result of the hegemony of Hezbollah, that terrorist organization affiliated with Iran, their hegemony over the decision-making process in Lebanon by the force of arms. As a result, the constitutional state institutions in Lebanon were disabled, and in order for the fraternal people of Lebanon to achieve their aspirations for security, stability, and prosperity, this terrorist organization must be disarmed. Mr. President, distinguished attendees, from this podium, we call for the intensification of global efforts to confront the great challenges facing humanity, whether due to climate change, poverty, organized crime, the spread of epidemics, or other challenges which require strengthening our cooperation for a brighter future, so that future generations can live in stability, peace, and security. Thank you, Mr. President, and may God's peace be upon you.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the King of Saudi Arabia and President of the Council of Ministers of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for the statement just made. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of North Macedonia to introduce an address by the head of state.